Stewards have had a meeting over Christmas and they have decided that. And we'll have a look at what it does for the race. Here we go, 5 lights are coming off and the Mexican Grand Prix is underway. And it's a long run down to turn 1. It looks like there's an Alpine of Cool Assassin who's had an absolutely cracking getaway. Mr. Wiggles has had a poor start. He's now down to 18th. And also Appy has lost a couple of places off the start too. We've got both Mercedes going side by side here, but SL O'Connor holding it well in between his teammate and that guy around the outside, who seems to have got past fairly, but has just lost out through turns 2 and 3. It is as it was. Prev has jumped Ryan off the start, and Kement's also having a good start. Appy trying to fight his way back up from 10th, and he's passed Dr. Edward, who started in 11th, so he's had a good start. Hyper's dropped slightly off his starting grid slot, but still within the points. Nice start from Flew as well. Mr. Wiggles trying to fight his way back up the field. He's back up to 15th now. RPR Maverick, we did say watch out for him. He's up a place off the start. James White has gone backwards a couple of places. Still, all drivers within a second of the car in front. No real incidents to talk about. No bits of damage or bodywork flying off. Drivers behaving themselves. As further down the field we've got Hyper, who's dropped off a little bit in this last sector from the car ahead. May drop him under pressure from Flew behind. But overall, it's a very steady lap 1. Drivers behaving themselves. No DRS until the start of lap 3. So, Flew is using overtake here. Doesn't seem like Ryan has any damage to his car, but we'll have to wait and see if he goes into the pits. No, he stays out. So perhaps a small mistake there from Ryan. A bit of a spin in the S section. That of course has boosted the likes of Flew up into 9th, Appy's up into 8th, Dr. Edward in 7th, Kement's in 6th, Ross is up to P5. And another virtual safety car, and Padge has now retired. So maybe some debris on the track. These two definitely within striking distance of the Alfa Romeo, and it looks like Prev's had a really good run out of turn 3. But not close enough, really well, and Fairley can't get past him. And SL O'Connor into the pits. So, SL O'Connor is the first to blink on the soft tyres. And Ross pits as well. Have to see if anyone else pits. Mr. Wiggles comes through to take 4th. Hissy comes through to take 5th. And a very close battle between Fairley and his teammate. In fact, it didn't look like Fairley had lost that much time on Connor anyways. Maybe Connor was stuck in a bit of traffic on his outlap. But Connor does keep 6th place. Not for long, he's looking to get past Hissy, who I think just lifts off there. Maybe think it's not my fight to challenge Connor here, and just lets him through. Could be a very wise move. And Connor is going for a 2-stop here. And Fairley is onto the medium compound tyre. Oh, and Connor's out! I didn't even see that. I was looking at the tyre graphic on the side of the screen, and SL O'Connor is now out of the race. That was so unexpected. Just another example of perhaps where the game can improve for the next F1 game. The safety car is in this lap, and Fairley will be leading them away. He's gone for it now. Hissy has a 5-second penalty for a collision with Wiggles. Flew and Appy changing places, and it looks like Ross has had a really good restart here. He's already alongside Fairley. A nice little gap behind him to Prev and Kements, but there you go, round the outside. And of course, when you're round the outside and have the inside for turn 2, you can take a lot more speed into it. And Ross, nice move there. Great move down the inside, down around the outside of turn 1, and he's taken the lead of the race, but he does have a time penalty. So Interesting to see what happens from here on in the top 4, all very close, within a second of each other. Dr. Edward is in 5th, Appy is in 6th, Ryan recovering from that earlier mistake in the S section. He's back up into 7th. I have to say, Ryan looks very fast here. Flew, Pete and Wiggles into the points, but Wiggles does have a time penalty, as does Hissy in 11th, so their challenge for points may be a little bit more complex. Mr. Wiggles, another time penalty, so that's going to really hurt his case for some points here this evening. But still, plenty of laps left. Ross leads this race. Clements is very close to the back of the Ferrari here. No DRS until the next time around the track. After a full course safety car, you need to wait until the 3rd lap of all these 4. Very close. Still have no idea which way this podium is going to go. One of these 4 drivers will miss out. At the moment, it looks like Clements, due to his time penalty. But Dr. Edward here is within striking distance of the top 4. He could mount a challenge for the podium here. As we say, still plenty of laps left, but as soon as DRS is active, that will be a massive game changer for any and all of these top 4. And if Dr. Edward can join this group and make it a top 5, then he can really put himself in a good position here, for a better position than 5th. Tidy as Bear, up to 9 seconds now of time penalties. He's on the back of White Maverick and James White Maverick and that guy for 13th, so he's still within striking distance. Pete with a time penalty, as is James White. DRS is now enabled, but they won't get it until the end of the lap, the end of Sector 2. At the moment, pointless, but there's still time for Dr. Edward to close that gap. Late braking there from Prev, forced to cut turn 1 to avoid a bit of a touching of wheels. Clements has got that move done. Of course, we do know that Clements has to pit again, because those soft tyres will not make it to the end. Question is, will those mediums last the rest of the race? Another 16 laps on them. That means Fairley will have to do 24 laps on a set of mediums. Might be. You can see it, a 5-second penalty, which means he's now up to 8 seconds, which again could mean that Dr. Edward has a sniff of jumping ahead of Clements. And there comes Mr. Wiggles, side by side, drivers giving each other room. Wiggles round the outside of turn 2. That was bold. Wait and see if it pays off. And it seems to have done. Mr. Wiggles up into 4th. In this race, has Fairley given himself too much to do with only 10 laps left of the race? And of course, if Fairley gets another time penalty, then he may not even win this race at all. In fact, no, Ross has 6 seconds, doesn't he? Yeah, Ross has 6 and Fairley has 3. So Fairley needs to avoid getting another time penalty, otherwise he will have to overtake Ross on track. Ross does pit. Fairley has forced his hand, but Fairley has gained 2 seconds this lap on the soft compound tyre. So Fairley will definitely jump ahead of Ross. Dr. Edwards stays out, as does Ryan, which is probably wise from their perspective. But there goes Fairley, and there is Ross. Ross has lost out to Clements, in fact, who is on medium compound tyre, but a brand new set. And it looks like AMS Fairley, if he can catch the top 2 and get a 3-second lead on Edward, it looks like Fairley has pulled an absolute blinder with his strategy. But still, 8 laps left. Oh, and Clements runs wide and possibly letting Ross through there. Clements has a 5-second gap behind to Prev, who is on a new set of soft tyres here, so Clements can't afford to lose too much time behind Ross because he has his own fight with Prev coming up. Flew having a great race. He's in 8th place and without a time penalty to his name, but he has got his teammate right behind him on a new set of soft tyres. Only 5 seconds off the leader, which means he has kind of closed that gap this lap to Fairley, but Fairley did have to get past the Haas car. Insane move, clip it. I think you should be able to. If not, we can rewatch the stream and clip it. Ryan Pitts. Very late move, might be going for fastest lap here, and a change for the lead. Dr. Edward not fighting too hard. Fairley takes the lead of the race. Dr. Edward here still has a good opportunity to stay on the podium. His real gap is 7 seconds back to Clements, but Clements has 11 seconds of time penalties. Dr. Edward looks like he has made the most of those medium tyres, and if he can keep them in good spot, in a good shape for the rest of the race, he will get a podium out of it. Ross is 5 seconds off the lead again, so he is lapping at a similar pace to Fairley, but just a little bit slower as Fairley sets a new fastest lap of the race. Lap 31 of 36, they've got 6 times left of the circuit. What's happened to Fairley? Has Fairley got a puncture? He's got a front right puncture. AMS Fairley has run over some debris somewhere or contact with a curb, and I can't believe what I'm seeing. Both Mercedes cars have had absolutely rotten luck in this race, and Fairley has lost the race win on a front right puncture. I saw that Edward just drop. All of a sudden it just dropped. And goodness knows how that's happened. It could have been done on a curb. These curbs are quite brutal on this game. Or it could have been some debris. We did have a couple of VSCs and a safety car in this race, as Ross makes his way round Dr. Edward for the lead of the race. Ross now has to build a 6-second lead. The problem for Edward is he's fought too much with Ross, and he's now only 4 seconds ahead of Clements. The problem is he was on new tyres, so it can't be a tyre issue. It can't be to do with percentage on tyres. It had to be some debris on the track. Fairley pits, and he might be able to salvage some points here if he's very quick in the last few laps, but one in that position would be so frustrated and feel very hard done by here with only a few laps left. Dr. Edward, 3.4 off of the lead. He's currently in the window that he can take the race win. He's definitely going to get a podium as it stands. He's got 11 seconds in terms of advantage on Clements, and he's got a 3-second advantage on Prev in terms of penalties. Mr. Wiggles has also had a great last stint of this race. He's only got 6 seconds now, and he's up in P5. James White has retired, and that's at the exit of turn 3. Will there be there's a safety car right on lap 33. There's a safety car, and this changes everything. This is a nightmare for Ross. Strategy, and now to this final safety car as Dr. Edward pits. This has been an absolute roller coaster. Of course, it's for many drivers here, it's a free pit stop. Prev stays out. He leads the pack here. Otherwise, they're really going to lose their advantage. I'll tell you who else this is advantaged is AMS Fairley. He has been brought, has the option to go. Ryan is in a good spot here for a podium, as is Dr. Edward, as is Prev. He only has 3 seconds here. Oh, and Ryan's out. What's happened with Ryan? I think there was contact. I definitely saw some bits of front wing, but Ryan is out of this race. The race carries on, but there is, he's in the wall, and there must have been contact with someone. Just don't know who. And we thought Ryan was then going to win this race, and now he's out of the race. Now Dr. Edward is in what you think a prime way of winning this race. If he can stay within 3 seconds of our leader, Prev. And how on earth did Ryan retire? Oh, and a bit of contact there between Ross and Wiggles. Old friends, old rivals colliding once again. Wiggles has dropped back now. Dr. Edward is up into third. Down the inside goes Kemments. Mr. Wiggles trying to fight back on the Williams car. Bit of contact. It's all happening. Ross is only a couple of tenths away from Prev. And Ross looks like he has some good pace here to challenge Prev. It's the last lap of the race. Lap 36 of 36. Anything can still happen here. Dr. Edward is in a prime spot here to win this race, but he still needs to be within 3 seconds of our race leader Prev, who is going side by side with Ross in turns 1 and 2. Ross makes that move done. Ross now needs to put his foot to the floor. Dr. Edward has a nice gap behind to AMS Fairley, who has jumped all the way back up to 4th place here. And it looks like he might lose a place to Cool Assassin on the line, but apart from that, it looks like Fairley won't lose any more places. Unless I jinx him, of course. Dr. Edward here needs to get past Prev quickly to avoid Ross gaining the race win. The gap is now 1.7 seconds, and if Dr. Edward gets stuck behind this Ferrari for too much longer, his race win might be gone. It's now 2.1 seconds. Ross will come home to take the checkered flag, but will Dr. Edward win? It's now 2.3 seconds. Round the final corner, AMS Fairley has fought amazingly back to get where he is, but Dr. Edward wins. Prev overtakes Ross on the line. Flew is now up into 4th. Cool Assassin is 5th. AMS Fairley, after that puncture, you'd have to say 6th is a very good result for him as well. Kemments in 7th, Pete in 8th. Mr. Wiggles still gets points even with the time penalties, and Hissy manages to stay ahead of Appy on the line. My goodness gracious me. And if ever there was a race where my neighbours would complain about the noise volume, that would be it. Wow. Oh my goodness.